My ex from 15 years ago called me and said, I need you to donate your kidney to me. Jessica's number popped up on my phone on a Tuesday morning while I was making coffee. I hadn't heard from her since 2010 when we broke up after dating for 2 years in college. No texts, no social media contact, nothing. So when I answered and heard her voice, my first thought was that someone had died. Instead, she told me she had kidney disease. Stage 4. Her family wasn't a match, and she was on the transplant list, but it could take years. She remembered my blood type from when we dated because I used to donate regularly. We were a perfect match back then, she said. Could I get tested to see if I could donate to her? I should have asked more questions right then. Should have asked why me after 15 years of silence. Why not reach out to anyone closer to her life now? But Jessica sounded desperate and scared, and some part of me still remembered the person I'd cared about all those years ago. I told her I'd think about it. She texted me the name of her doctor and the hospital where she was being treated. I called the transplant coordinator the next day and started the evaluation process. Blood work, medical history, physical exam. The whole thing would take weeks, but I figured if I could help save someone's life, I should at least try. While I waited for test results, I did what anyone would do. I looked Jessica up on social media. Her Instagram was public and full of recent photos. Her at restaurants with friends. Beach vacation pictures from 2 months ago. A 5K race she'd run 3 weeks earlier. I'm not a doctor, but people with stage 4 kidney disease don't usually run 5Ks. They're usually exhausted, dealing with severe symptoms. Jessica looked healthy and active in every single photo. I told myself maybe she was just having good days, that the photos were older than they looked, but something felt off. The transplant coordinator called me a week later with my blood work results. I was a match, she said, and we could proceed to the next round of testing. I asked her about Jessica's condition, trying to sound casual. The coordinator paused for a long moment before saying she couldn't discuss other patients' medical information. But the way she said it made my stomach drop, like she was choosing her words very carefully. I called the hospital's main number and asked to be transferred to the nephrology department. Said I was trying to reach my friend Jessica, who was a patient there. The receptionist checked and told me they had no patient by that name. Maybe she goes to a different hospital, I thought. Maybe I misheard. But Jessica had specifically told me the name of this hospital, had given me her doctor's name, had set up my coordinator appointment through this exact facility. I drove to the hospital that Saturday and went to the transplant center. Told them I had questions about being a donor for Jessica. Used her last name. The nurse at the desk looked confused and checked her computer. We don't have any active transplant cases for that patient, she said. Are you sure you have the right hospital? I showed her the text from Jessica with the hospital name and doctor's information. The nurse's expression changed to something I couldn't quite read. She excused herself and came back 5 minutes later with a supervisor. The supervisor asked me to come into a private room. She wanted to know exactly what Jessica had told me, how she'd contacted me, what I'd agreed to. When I finished explaining, the supervisor pulled up something on her computer and turned the screen toward me. That's when I saw Jessica's real medical records. And that's when I realized why she actually needed my kidney. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below. Jessica's real medical records were nothing like what she'd told me. There was no stage 4 kidney disease, no dialysis treatments, no desperate wait on a transplant list. Instead, there was a single outpatient visit from 3 months ago where she'd been evaluated for donor compatibility assessment and given a clean bill of health. The supervisor's face was grim as I scanned the document. This isn't what you think it is, she said quietly. Jessica isn't a transplant recipient. She's been flagged in our system as a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. My stomach dropped. What kind of investigation? The supervisor hesitated, then turned her computer screen back toward herself. I shouldn't be showing you this at all, but you need to understand the danger you're in. She lowered her voice. We believe Jessica is working with someone inside the medical system to identify and manipulate potential organ donors. For what? I asked, though I was starting to piece it together. Black market organ trafficking. The words hung in the air between us. I felt dizzy suddenly, like the floor was tilting beneath me. The transplant coordinator you spoke with isn't employed by this hospital, she continued. We've had reports of someone using our facility's name to conduct fake evaluations. They're identifying compatible donors and then, she didn't finish the sentence. They're stealing organs, I said flatly. She nodded. We've alerted authorities, but these operations are difficult to track. They move locations frequently. I thought about Jessica's desperate voice on the phone, the way she'd specifically mentioned remembering my blood type. The strange pauses from the transplant coordinator when I'd asked questions. I need to speak with someone from security, I said. I have texts, phone records, everything she sent me. The supervisor made a call, and within minutes, a hospital security officer and a woman who introduced herself as Detective Rivera were in the room with us. I handed over my phone, showed them the texts, played Jessica's voicemails. Detective Rivera took notes while I explained our history, how we'd dated in college until 2010, how strange it was that she'd reached out after 15 years of silence. You're not the first person she's contacted, Detective Rivera said after I finished. We've identified at least 3 other former classmates who've received similar calls in the past month. Did any of them? I couldn't finish the question. No, she said firmly. But one man got as far as a pre-surgery evaluation at a hotel room before getting suspicious and leaving. We believe Jessica is working with a doctor named Marcus Chen. He lost his medical license 2 years ago for ethics violations, but he still has the surgical skills and connections to run this kind of operation. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. Detective Rivera nodded. Answer it. Put it on speaker. My hand trembled as I accepted the call. Hello? Where are you? Jessica's voice was sharp, irritated. You were supposed to meet the coordinator an hour ago for your final evaluation. Sorry, I got held up at work. I lied, watching Detective Rivera nod encouragingly. I'm on my way now. Don't bother. Jessica snapped. We've rescheduled for tomorrow. The hotel near the airport, room 412, 9 a.m. Don't be late this time. We have a tight window. Hotel? I asked, trying to sound merely confused rather than alarmed. I thought we were doing this at the hospital. There was a pause. The hospital's renovating that wing. We're using alternative facilities temporarily. Her voice softened. becoming the desperate ex-girlfriend again. Please, I really need you to follow through on this. My time is running out. After I hung up, Detective Rivera immediately called someone. We need surveillance on the airport, Marriott. Room 412. Suspects Jessica Winters and likely doctor. Marcus Chen planning organ harvesting operation. While she coordinated with her team, a nurse entered with a file folder and handed it to the supervisor. They spoke in hushed tones, and the supervisor's expression darkened further. What is it? I asked when Detective Rivera finished her call. The supervisor hesitated before answering. We've been compiling a list of people Jessica has contacted. Your name is on it, along with 5 other former classmates from your university. All with compatible blood types, all single with few family connections. She's been targeting people who wouldn't be immediately missed. Detective Rivera turned to me. We need your help setting up a sting operation. Jessica and her accomplices need to be caught in the act for charges to stick. I thought about how close I'd come to walking into their trap. How I might have woken up in a bathtub somewhere, missing a kidney, or worse, not woken up at all. What do you need me to do? I asked. We need you to keep that appointment tomorrow, she said, but you won't be going alone. I hired a private investigator the next morning. Detective Rivera had advised against direct confrontation with Jessica, but I needed to understand the scope of what I'd almost walked into. The PI, a former police officer named Tara Michaels, listened carefully as I laid out everything I knew. Organ trafficking is rare in the US, but not unheard of, she said, making notes in a small leather-bound notebook. The fact that they're targeting specific people from your college days suggests this is calculated, not opportunistic. I pushed Jessica's Instagram profile across the table. She looks perfectly healthy here, hiking in Colorado last month, running a half marathon 2 weeks ago. Isaac Sestant. Tara nodded. Classic manipulation. She needed you to believe she was dying. My phone buzzed for the 3rd time that hour. Jessica again. I silenced it and turned it face down on the table. How many times has she called since yesterday? Tara asked. 14 calls, 8 voicemails, 23 texts. I rubbed my eyes. They're getting increasingly desperate. The last one said, I know you were at the hospital asking questions. Tara's expression tightened. That's concerning. It means she has someone watching the hospital or access to their security systems. I played the most recent voicemail on speaker. Listen to me. Jessica's voice was raw, almost unrecognizable. You have no idea what you're getting involved in. These people don't mess around. I tried to keep this simple, but you're making things complicated. For both of us, call me back immediately. She's scared, Tara observed. Not of you, but of whoever she's working with. 3 days later, Tara called with her first report. She'd identified 5 more people from our university who'd been contacted by Jessica in the past month. All had similar stories, Jessica reaching out after years of silence, claiming kidney failure, asking about blood type compatibility. 2 of them went as far as meeting with the fake transplant coordinator, Tara explained. A man named Eric Donovan actually showed up at the hotel room for the final evaluation, but left when they asked him to drink something that would help with the imaging. They were going to drug him, I said, feeling sick. Almost certainly. I've also identified Jessica's accomplice. She sent a photo to my phone. Dr. Marcus Chen lost his medical license in 2020 for falsifying transplant records. He was performing unnecessary surgeries and selling the harvested organs on the black market. I stared at the photo of a middle-aged Asian man with rimless glasses and a confident smile. This is who Jessica is working with? Yes. And there's more. Chen has connections to international organ brokers who pay upwards of $200,000 per kidney. With Jessica identifying and manipulating donors, they've created a streamlined operation. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every noise made me jump. I kept picturing myself in that hotel room, drugged and helpless while Dr. Chen harvested my kidney. Around 2 a.m., I finally fell into a restless sleep, only to be jolted awake by pounding on my front door. I froze, heart hammering in my chest. The pounding came again, more insistent. Open the door. We know you're in there. The voice was male, deep, unfamiliar. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, when my phone lit up with a text from Jessica. My business partner is there to talk. Don't make this difficult. Just hear him out. I texted Detective Rivera while the pounding continued, then crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. A tall man in a black suit stood on my porch, his back to me as he looked out toward the street. Next to him was a shorter man I recognized immediately from the photo, Dr. Marcus Chen. We're not leaving until we talk, Chen called out. This can be civilized or not, your choice. My phone buzzed with Rivera's response. Officers en route. Do not engage. Stay hidden. I backed away from the window, moving silently to my bedroom where I could lock the door and put more barriers between us. The pounding stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of something scratching at my lock. They were trying to break in. I barricaded myself in the bathroom, clutching my phone and listening to the sounds of someone moving through my house. Heavy footsteps in the hallway, drawers being opened and closed. Then silence. We know you contacted the hospital. Chen's voice came from just outside the bathroom door, making me jump. Jessica was trying to help you. A simple transaction, 1 kidney for $50,000, no questions asked, but now you've complicated things. I held my breath, praying the police would arrive soon. We're leaving information on your kitchen counter, he continued. Our offer still stands, but the price has changed. We need to move our operation, thanks to you, and that costs money. So now we're offering $25,000. His footsteps retreated down the hall. You have 24 hours to contact Jessica. After that, we'll be moving on to other candidates, and you won't like how we ensure your silence. I heard my front door open and close. Through the bathroom window, I watched the 2 men walk calmly to a black SUV parked across the street and drive away. 5 minutes later, 2 police cars pulled up, lights flashing. On my kitchen counter, they'd left a burner phone and a typed note with instructions for the donation procedure. Detective Rivera bagged everything as evidence while I sat at my dining table, hands still shaking. We've got enough to move on them now, she said. Breaking and entering, criminal threatening, conspiracy to commit organ trafficking, but what we really want is to catch them in the act. You want me to go through with meeting them? I said, realizing where this was headed. Rivera nodded. A controlled meeting. You'll be wired. We'll have officers positioned nearby. This might be our only chance to shut down their entire operation before someone gets hurt or worse. I thought about the other victims Jessica had contacted, about how close I'd come to being drugged in that hotel room, about Dr. Chen standing outside my bathroom door, threatening me in my own home. What do you need me to do? I asked. Detective Rivera and I sat across from each other at a small table in the back corner of a coffee shop 3 blocks from the police station. She pushed a manila folder toward me while stirring her untouched black coffee. "This is everything we have on Jessica and Dr. Chen's operation," she said, her voice low. "6 confirmed targets in the last month, all former classmates from your university, all with compatible blood types." I flipped through the file, my stomach turning as I saw the familiar faces people I'd passed in hallways and sat with in lecture halls years ago. Eric Donovan's statement described how he'd narrowly escaped being drugged in that hotel room. Another woman, Meredith Kaplan, had backed out after the transplant coordinator had been unable to answer basic medical questions. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, closing the file. "We believe they've been operating for at least 18 months. Rivera said. "We've connected them to 3 successful illegal organ harvests in different states. The victims survived but were left with significant medical complications." "And they've gotten away with it until now?" Rivera nodded grimly. "They're smart. They move locations frequently, use burner phones, pay cash for hotel rooms. The victims are usually too embarrassed or scared to come forward. You're actually the first person who's been willing to help us set up a sting." The weight of what I was about to do settled over me. "What exactly will happen tomorrow?" "You'll meet Jessica at the hotel as planned. We'll wire you with a microphone and have officers in adjacent rooms. The goal is to get Jessica and Dr. Chen to explicitly discuss the organ harvesting operation. The more details, the better." My hands trembled slightly as I took a sip of my coffee. "What if something goes wrong?" "We'll be monitoring everything in real time. At the first sign of danger, we move in." She leaned forward. "But I need you to understand the risks. These people are dangerous. They've already threatened you." I thought about Chen standing outside my bathroom door. About Jessica's increasingly desperate messages. "I understand." The next morning, I sat in a van in the hotel parking lot while a technician fitted me with a wire. Detective Rivera stood nearby, reviewing the operation details with her team. "Remember, we need them to explicitly discuss the organ harvesting," she said. "Get them talking about the procedure, the payment, their other victims if possible." The technician finished taping the wire to my chest and helped me button my shirt. "The microphone is sensitive enough to pick up normal conversation. No need to speak loudly or unnaturally." I nodded, trying to calm my racing heart. "What if they search me?" "They probably will," Rivera said. "The wire is designed to be nearly impossible to detect in a casual pat-down, but if they do find it, we'll move in immediately." She handed me the burner phone Chen had left at my house. "Use this to call Jessica when you arrive at the room. We'll be listening to everything." 20 minutes later, I stood outside room 412, my palms sweating as I knocked on the door. Jessica opened it almost immediately. She looked nothing like her Instagram photos. Her face was drawn, eyes darting nervously up and down the hallway. "You're late," she said, pulling me inside and quickly closing the door. The room had been converted into a makeshift medical space. Plastic sheeting covered the floor near the bathroom. A portable surgical lamp stood in the corner. Medical equipment was arranged on the desk: IV bags, tubing, monitoring devices. Dr. Chen stood by the window, watching the parking lot below. He turned when I entered, his expression unreadable behind his rimless glasses. "So you decided to be reasonable after all," he said. I swallowed hard. "I need to understand exactly what's happening here. You're paying me $25,000 for my kidney?" Jessica shook her head. "That's what we're paying you. The client pays us significantly more." "How much more?" I asked, remembering Rivera's instructions to get them talking. Chen smiled thinly. "Our clients pay upwards of $2 million for a healthy, compatible kidney. They're wealthy people who don't want to wait years on transplant lists." "$2 million?" I repeated, genuinely shocked. "And I only get $25,000? You get to walk away," Chen said coldly. "Many donors don't have that option." A chill ran down my spine. "What does that mean?" Jessica shot Chen a warning look. "It means this is a good deal for everyone. You get cash, no questions asked. Our client gets a kidney. We handle all the logistics." "How many people have you done this to?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Chen checked his watch. "Enough questions. We need to prepare you for the procedure." "I'm not doing anything until I understand what I'm getting into," I insisted. "How do I know you won't just take both kidneys and leave me for dead?" Jessica looked genuinely offended. "We're not murderers. This is a business transaction. A business that's made you. How much money?" I pressed. Chen sighed impatiently. "We've successfully harvested 12 kidneys in the past 18 months. Each operation nets approximately $1.5 million in profit after expenses. Now, are you ready to proceed? Or should we find another donor?" I felt a surge of relief. He'd just confessed to everything on tape. And the people who didn't walk away? "Complications happen," Chen said dismissively. "2 donors had adverse reactions to the anesthesia. Unfortunate, but unavoidable in our line of work." A knock at the door made everyone freeze. Jessica looked at Chen in panic. "Are you expecting someone else?" I asked, my heart pounding. Before either could answer, the door burst open. Detective Rivera led a team of officers into the room, weapons drawn. "Police, everyone on the ground now!" Chen lunged toward the bathroom, but an officer tackled him before he could escape. Jessica stood frozen in shock as Rivera handcuffed her. "Jessica Winters, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit organ trafficking, criminal threatening, and attempted aggravated assault," Rivera recited, securing the cuffs. 2 more officers entered from the adjoining room, leading out a man and woman in scrubs, Chen's surgical assistants. A third person, a well-dressed businessman, was being handcuffed in the hallway. "That's the buyer," Rivera explained, seeing my questioning look. "We've been tracking him for months. International businessman who arranges medical tourism for wealthy clients." As they led Jessica past me toward the door, she stopped and stared at me with cold hatred. "You have no idea what you've done," she hissed. "These people will find you." Rivera pulled her away. "No, they won't. We've got the entire network now, thanks to your friend here." I watched as they escorted all 5 conspirators out of the hotel room, feeling a complex mixture of relief, fear, and lingering disbelief that someone I'd once loved could have been willing to cut me open in a hotel room for profit. Detective Rivera returned a few minutes later, helping me remove the wire. "You did great," she said. "We got everything we needed and more. Chen's confession about the 12 kidneys and 2 deaths gives us enough to put them away for decades." I nodded numbly, suddenly exhausted. "What happens now?" "Now," she said, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. "You go home and try to process all this, and we make sure Jessica and her friends never hurt anyone else again." The trial lasted 4 grueling months. I sat in that courtroom every day, watching Jessica and Dr. Chen in their matching orange jumpsuits, refusing to look at me as the prosecution methodically laid out their operation in horrifying detail. The defendants harvested 12 kidneys illegally over an 18-month period, the prosecutor explained to the jury, pointing to a timeline displayed on a large screen. They targeted individuals with specific blood types, primarily former acquaintances, who would be less likely to suspect Miss Winter's motives. I flinched as they showed photos of hotel rooms converted to makeshift operating theaters, plastic sheeting on floors, surgical equipment arranged on desks, portable lamps, positioned for maximum visibility during procedures. The same setup I'd walked into that day. Detective Rivera sat beside me during the worst testimony, the medical examiner describing 2 victims who hadn't survived. A 3-4-year-old man named Thomas Blackwell who'd bled out in a Comfort Inn outside Philadelphia. A 2-9-year-old woman, Aisha Johnson, who'd had a fatal reaction to improperly administered anesthesia in a Denver hotel room. They left her body in the bathtub, the medical examiner testified, his voice clinically detached as the jury visibly recoiled. They'd attempted to harvest both kidneys, not just one. Jessica never took the stand, but Dr. Chen did, attempting to blame everything on her. His testimony painted Jessica as the mastermind who'd recruited him after his license was revoked. She approached me with a business proposal, he claimed, adjusting his rimless glasses. She had the connections, the ability to manipulate donors. She needed my surgical skills. His lawyer tried to position him as a reluctant participant, but the prosecution had text messages, proving otherwise detailed discussions about profit margins, operating schedules, and cold calculations about which donors were least likely to cause problems. During a recess, Rivera explained why Jessica's defense strategy of silence made sense. They have her on tape explicitly discussing harvesting your kidney. 12 successful operations, 2 deaths. She knows anything she says will only make it worse. When the verdict finally came, it was unanimous on all counts. Jessica received 25 years for organ trafficking, conspiracy to commit aggravated assault, and 2 counts of manslaughter. Dr. Chen got 30 years due to his medical background and direct involvement in the surgeries. You did this, Jessica mouthed at me as they led her away. No remorse, just cold hatred. Outside the courthouse, I met Eric Donovan in person for the first time, the man who'd escaped being drugged in that hotel room. He testified during the second week of the trial, describing how he'd become suspicious when the transplant coordinator couldn't answer basic medical questions. I can't believe I almost fell for it, he said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. If you hadn't gone to the police when you did, they might have moved on to someone else from our class. I still don't understand how she found us all, I admitted. Why target people from college specifically? Rivera joined us, tucking a case file under her arm. We've been piecing that together. Jessica had access to the alumni database through her job at the University Foundation. She could search by blood type because of those campus donation drives they used to run. The ones where they'd post your name and blood type on the donor wall. I remembered giving blood several times during my sophomore year, including once when Jessica and I had gone together. Exactly, Rivera nodded. She had a ready-made list of potential donors she'd already established connections with. 3 weeks after the trial ended, I received a call from Jessica's mother, a woman I'd never met during our 2 years of dating. Her voice was thin and hesitant as she introduced herself. I need to tell you something about Jessica, she said. Something that doesn't excuse what she did, but might help you understand. We met at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Linda Winters was in her 60s, with the same dark hair as Jessica, but streaked with gray, her hands constantly fidgeting with her cup as she spoke. Jessica's kidneys were failing, she said quietly. She was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease 2 years ago, the same condition that killed her father when she was a teenager. I sat back, stunned. But her Instagram, all those hiking photos, the half marathon, Linda shook her head. Old photos she kept recycling. By the time she contacted you, she was on dialysis 3 times a week. The doctors gave her maybe a year without a transplant. Why didn't she just tell me the truth? I asked, remembering how convincing Jessica had sounded on the phone that first day. I might have actually considered donating if she'd been honest. Because she wasn't looking for one kidney for herself, Linda replied, her eyes filling with tears. She needed money for experimental treatments in Switzerland. Insurance wouldn't cover it. Each surgery she and Dr. Chen performed was supposed to fund her own care. I thought about the math, 12 kidneys at nearly $2 million each. That's far more than any treatment would cost. Linda's gaze dropped to her coffee. Greed takes over. The more money they made, the more Jessica convinced herself she deserved it after what happened to her father. That night, I couldn't sleep, turning over everything I'd learned. Jessica's illness didn't justify what she'd done. Nothing could excuse harvesting organs from unwilling victims, leaving 2 people dead in hotel bathrooms. But understanding the desperation that had started it all left me feeling hollow. 6 months after the trial, I helped Detective Rivera organize a support group for everyone Jessica had contacted. 8 of us met in a community center conference room, the 6 who'd escaped before being operated on, and 2 survivors who'd had kidneys removed before Jessica targeted our university circle. I still check my locks 3 times every night, Meredith Kaplan admitted during our first meeting. She'd been the one who'd backed out after questioning the fake transplant coordinator. I can't shake the feeling that someone's watching me. The nightmares are the worst part, said Miguel Santos, one of the survivors who'd woken up in a motel bathtub missing a kidney. I keep dreaming. I'm back in that room, trying to scream, but nothing comes out. We shared our stories, our fears, our anger. Some directed theirs at Jessica and Dr. Chen. Others, like me, struggled with more complicated emotions. The lingering disbelief that someone we'd known could have been willing to cut us open for profit, balanced against the knowledge of Jessica's own desperate circumstances. Rivera attended every meeting, providing updates on the case. The international businessman they'd arrested at the hotel had flipped on his entire network in exchange for a reduced sentence. 12 wealthy clients who'd purchased kidneys had been identified. 3 more doctors involved in similar operations had been arrested. You've helped shut down one of the largest organ trafficking rings in the country, she told us during our third meeting. What Jessica and Dr. Chen started has tentacles that reach across 3 continents. As I drove home that night, I thought about how close I'd come to being another victim drugged in a hotel room, my kidney removed by a disgraced doctor while my ex-girlfriend assisted. All because I'd answered a phone call from someone I hadn't spoken to since 2010. I still check my phone carefully before answering unknown numbers. I still wake up sometimes with phantom pain in my side. But mostly, I think about those two people who didn't survive Thomas and Aisha, and I'm grateful that because I questioned Jessica's story, because I noticed the inconsistencies, because I went to the hospital that day instead of the hotel, no one else will suffer the same fate. Jessica will be eligible for parole in 15 years. I don't know if her kidneys will last that long without the treatment she was trying to fund. Sometimes I wonder if that's justice or just another tragedy layered on top of all the others in this story. But then I remember the plastic sheeting on that hotel floor, and I know we all just barely escaped something truly horrific.